I'm here on the ground with my nose in it since the whole thing began. I've nurtured every sensation man has been inspired to have. I cared about what he wanted, and I never judged him. Why? Because I never rejected him, in spite of all his imperfections. I'm a fan of man. I'm a humanist. Maybe the last humanist. Who, in their right mind, Kevin, could possibly deny the 20th century was entirely mine? All of it, Kevin! All of it. Mine. I'm peaking, Kevin. It's my time now. It's our time.
Hello everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be another movie review in our Unrated and Underappreciated movie review series, and in this edition we will focus on the supernatural legal drama The Devil's Advocate. Released in October the 17th, 1997, it stars Keanu Reeves, Al Pacino, Charlize Farron, Jeffrey Jones, and it was directed by Taylor Hackford. Now the story here is that we follow young lawyer Kevin Lomax, who is set within Florida, who has the very proud distinction of never losing a case. In his latest trial, he has to defend a school teacher who has been charged with violating a young schoolgirl. Halfway through the trial, Kevin realises that the teacher is indeed guilty of the charge, and after some soul searching he proceeds with the case and manages to deem a not guilty verdict. This unbeaten run eventually creates a massive opportunity to work for a huge top law firm within New York. He moves there with his wife, and through the guidance of the head of the firm, John Milton, Kevin quickly rises through the ranks, continuing his unbeaten run. But as the cases become far more complicated, Kevin's personal life begins to become more fractured, as his unrelenting obsession with his job affects his relationship with his wife. Over the course of the story, Kevin faces several temptations, pressures, and hard decisions as he has to decide what's most important within his life. Now, The Devil's Advocate is a superb, very delicious mix of both a supernatural thriller and a courtroom drama. For all of the intense horror elements, this isn't really a scary film. The real concept here is that this is very much of a more speculative morality tale. How much are you willing to compromise to succeed? Do you have any morals regarding what's right and what's wrong? How much does ego, ambition, wealth, greed and opportunism change a person? These themes are very well familiar to us within normal life in general, let alone with movies. We've had certain great films such as Wall Street, The Firm, Boiler Room all cover this territory of being far more corrupted by success, and they showcase these stories and themes around those we stereotypically associate with them the most, being stockbrokers, finance or accountants, and of course lawyers. And The Devil's Advocate is very much of a savage satire, commentary on how cold and ruthless lawyers can be. Whilst covering the legal processes, Devil's Advocate doesn't go over the top with the technical jargon and keeps it broad enough to be able to understand what's going on throughout the story. It does so well to keep the escalation and suspense throughout each case that we see Kevin go through, and this just keeps you compelled to the overall film itself. Now, as mentioned, there is a horror and a supernatural edge to this film, making it even more interesting. It's not particularly graphic in terms of its scenes. There are some intense scenes, yes, there are some sex scenes and nudity and violence, but it's all delivered with some more class and sophistication from director Taylor Hackford. Now we have to talk about the cast and the performances, and in the lead role as Kevin, Keanu Reeves does a solid job in conveying all of the stresses and emotions that we see Kevin go through throughout the story. Yes, it is very much the typical Keanu Reeves that we all have become accustomed to for the last 20 to 25 years. There's that typical accent, that swagger, that confidence. Even with the southern accent that he puts on throughout this film, it's still very much more Keanu Reeves than a natural character. But I think at best, Keanu Reeves is a serviceable actor, but this is probably one of his most dramatic performances, and when we assess his overall career, it's probably actually one of his best, if not the best, of his overall filmography. Charlize Farron, in one of her early starring roles, also does a fine job as Kevin's wife Marianne, who at first is equally as ambitious, loving Kevin's rise to his career, but later on she finds herself very distant and alone as Kevin becomes far more consumed with his job, and she actually has quite a vivid and very traumatic character arc, and Charlize Farron does very well in these later scenes and shows early potential of the commanding actress that she would later become throughout the next 10 to 15 years after this film. We also have very good supporting roles. Jeffrey Jones as Eddie Barzon, he's one of the partners of the law firm who later on becomes jealous as Milton pays far more attention to Kevin than what he does to himself. He also threatens to uncover a certain corruption within the law firm. We have Connie Nielsen as Christabella, who is very much the sexy, statuesque lawyer. She's very much of that seductive temptation, constantly provoking and teasing Kevin throughout the film. Judith Ivey as Kevin's mother becomes more prominent later on within the second half of the film, but it's a very good performance overall. We have Craig T. Nelson, who is also good as Alexander Cullen, a major client who's under investigation for a double homicide. Now, for all of the previous merits of this film, Devil's Advocate wouldn't be the film it was without mentioning the main man, the usual suspect. You know who it is, Mr. Al Pacino. I've stated in so many previous reviews that I deem him to be the greatest ever leading actor of all time within all of the industry, and he proves that yet again throughout this film. As Milton, he's clearly the intended Satan personality, the devil as per the title, and through the story he continually manipulates and tests Kevin as he goes about trying to win all of his cases. Now, Al Pacino doesn't fully consume the film, he's much more of a supporting role throughout this movie. Yet as usual, he commands your attention in every scene he's in, and that's a true testament of any great actor to really steal the film despite having the less amount of scenes and dialogue. Al Pacino exhibits his usual flamboyant charisma, and it's another reminder of why he's so enjoyable to watch. He's so magnetic and he's so compelling. This really would have been a far lesser film if he wasn't involved. Now, as mentioned before, he supports the film for the most part, and then he becomes a pure acting supernova in the movie's climactic act. Without spoiling it too much, he reveals his true self, and for a near 10 to 15 minutes he transmits a truly grandstanding performance, providing so much bravado, humour, extravagance and loudness. These are all of the elements of his acting that we have grown so much to love him for throughout his whole career. And when he's in this type of form, you can really watch him all day long. This is very much Al Pacino in beast mode. And when he's in this type of form, not really many actors, if any, can really compare to him. I'd probably say maybe only the likes of Jack Nicholson, who himself has played many devilish roles throughout his own career. He has the same kind of showcasing and grandstanding, but many other actors just don't have that screen magnetism that I feel Al Pacino does. And Devil's Advocate, I think, is one of his greatest performances, confirming that Al Pacino purely rules, not only in this movie but also in so many other films. And that's well known to everybody, but I think in particular Devil's Advocate showcases once again the true elements of the great leading man's acting ability. So if I had to give an overall score for Devil's Advocate, I would give it an 8.1 out of 10. So when we go on to the overall release of the film, on a budget of 57 million, the movie managed to gross 153 million worldwide. So overall, I'd say it was a financial success. It wasn't quite the true horror that I think the trailers sold it as, but I think the star power of both Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves was more than enough to make it succeed overall, especially in the overseas markets. But Devil's Advocate doesn't really get mentioned in either actors' careers, which I think is a shame, because the film overall is a fine, accomplished, very extravagant piece of movie making. It's very atmospheric, it's very intelligent and composed, and featuring probably the strongest of Keanu Reeves' performances, and also Al Pacino at the top of his very game. And that's why I deem Devil's Advocate a great movie, and it deserves far more recognition and appreciation than what I feel it got both pre and post its overall release. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings and review of The Devil's Advocate. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have seen the movie, how do you think it compares in both Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino's filmography? Do you think it deserves far more attention and recognition that it overall deserves? Let me know what you think in the comments. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.